Good Wednesday afternoon. Thanks for joining us on Kare 11 News Now. I'm Morgan Wolf. Right now, Minnesota health officials say that one person is being monitored after coming in contact with someone on the cruise ship that is tied to that deadly hantavirus outbreak. Health officials, however, say that the risk to the public is still very low. Raya Katene has more.
This announcement from the Minnesota Department of Health is the first we're hearing of someone in the state being monitored for hantavirus after they may have been exposed overseas to someone who tested positive after being on the MV Hondius cruise.
I think it's a really good sign.
That's right, it's a good sign, says Dr. Kare with Johns Hopkins University, because it means contact tracing is working.
You want anybody that was in contact with someone who tested positive to be somebody who's being monitored by a health department.
Dr. DeBank's background is in virology.
At what point will I be worried if I see cases that aren't linked to contact tracing popping up in different places?
Even then, she says this outbreak won't evolve into a pandemic like what we saw with COVID-19. She notes that Andes virus is the only hantavirus known to spread person to person, but even then, transmission has only been documented during close, prolonged contact.
This virus is not as infectious as COVID-19, and I think that the risk to the average person is extremely low, just because the only people that have gotten and tested positive for it so far are those people that have actually been on the cruise.
The Minnesota Department of Health also says the risk to the public remains very low. For now, the Minnesotan who may have been exposed is being monitored daily, the department says, and is not showing any symptoms.
Is there any sort of cause for concern?
Obviously, things could change, as the days go by, but I don't think that there's any reason for people to freak out just because we aren't seeing anything that we're not expecting at this point.
Now, Minnesota isn't the only state monitoring someone for potential exposure. We know that almost a dozen states right now are doing the exact same thing. But again, health officials say that that's not unexpected. It is meaning that contact tracing is working exactly how it should be. So out of the 18 Americans who were aboard the ship, one person had developed some mild symptoms but tested negative for the virus yesterday. And another passenger who had tested positive hasn't developed any symptoms. 16 other passengers are negative and don't have any symptoms but are being monitored just as a precaution. Today, we're also getting an update internationally as health officials work to contain the virus. Doctors in Paris are saying a French woman infected during the cruise is now critically ill and being treated with an artificial lung. Spanish officials also confirmed that another person is in quarantine at a military hospital, raising that outbreak total now to 11 cases. This afternoon, President Trump arriving in China for a very high-stakes summit with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. The two nations are looking to extend a very fragile trade truce. China is one of the most important trade partners that our country has, but the summit comes against the backdrop of the U.S. war with Iran, who maintains a close relationship with China. NBC's Janice Mackey-Fair reports from Beijing.
The historic visit is officially underway, the first by a U.S. president to China in 9 years, with President Trump set to meet with China's leader Xi Jinping. Air Force One touched down in Beijing, the president greeted by hundreds of young people waving Chinese and American flags, an honor guard, dignitaries, and the U.S. ambassador to China, David Perdue. The two-day visit will include face-to-face meetings, a ceremony at the Great Hall of the People, a tour of the Temple of Heaven, a state banquet. These are all special measures that aren't extended to all visiting heads of state. But there's unlikely to be any grand deal or reset announced. Rather, the summit is going to be about shoring up stability in the U.S.-China relationship and the economic benefits that could come from that. The Iran war is also expected to be discussed given China's relationship with Iran, though Xi Jinping isn't likely going to let Iran dominate the agenda with so much at stake with China's relations with the U.S. And that relationship is no longer just about tariffs. The rivalry now touches artificial intelligence, national security, supply chains, and Taiwan. In terms of deliverables, President Trump is looking for big Chinese purchases of American goods like aircraft, energy, and agriculture. More than a dozen CEOs have joined him for this trip. For Xi Jinping, the priority, stability to manage tensions with the U.S. Chinese officials feel they know President Trump better this time. He's less hawkish on China than during his first term. The optics of the summit will be scrutinized. Both leaders are looking to project strength and to walk away with headlines. Janice Mackey-Freer, NBC News, Beijing.
A big headline today, the disgraced lawyer Alex Murdaugh is set to get a new trial after the South Carolina Supreme Court overturned his conviction and life sentence in the shooting deaths of his wife and younger son. Now, the justices ruled that a former court clerk made suggestive comments to jurors, implying that Murdaugh's testimony could not be trusted. The attorneys say that prevented him from getting then a fair trial, and the court agreed. But it doesn't mean that Murdaugh will be getting out of prison anytime soon. He is serving a 40-year federal sentence after pleading guilty to stealing around $12 million. Murdaugh has admitted to various financial crimes, but denied killing his wife and son, whose bodies were found outside of their home in 2021. All right, to some local headlines right now. 2 people are in police custody after a weekend shooting in Fridley left a woman seriously hurt. Fridley police say that the woman was shot Saturday night as she was driving with a child in the vehicle. Officers believe that she was driving on University Avenue when someone in another car shot at her. That child luckily was not hurt. Police now say that they have arrested a man and a woman from Columbia Heights. Right now, a Minneapolis grocery store owner is facing felony charges after allegedly trafficking more than $1 million in SNAP benefits. Investigators say that Abdid Wahid Mohammed used EBT cards that didn't belong to him to buy energy drinks, formula, and candy from wholesale stores. The BCA tracked those items down and found them on the shelves of Mohammed's grocery store. Investigators linked the cards that he used to his customers and a family who left the country. Mohammed is facing up to 20 years in prison. This afternoon, the results are in on school funding referendums in 2 metro districts. In Lakeville, why don't we start there? Voters approved a $139 million referendum with a 54% voting in favor. The district says that the money will be used to expand its 3 middle schools and improve other classrooms and learning spaces. Over in South St. Paul, they also had a referendum, but their voters rejected the bond referendum and bid to renew a tax levy. The school says that the $50 million bond would have been used for critical building updates and renovations. The levy would have helped maintaining school technology and getting some textbooks and materials. For the first time in 3 years, American wages are no longer outpacing inflation. Consumer prices soared 3.8% last month, and analysts say that it is a clear impact of the higher gas prices since the start of the war with Iran. To help temporarily ease pain at the pump, President Trump wants to suspend the federal gas tax, which could offer some relief for families and businesses that spend a lot of time on the road. Here's Gordon Severson with a breakdown of how much drivers then could be saving.
How are the gas prices affecting you and your business?
Terrible. Things could not be going worse right now.
When you work in the courier business like Benjamin Bianchini,
I'm doing 25 loads today. We're running all over the metro.
you spend a lot of money on gas. So I would assume your drivers are filling up at least once a day.
Oh yeah, 1 or 2 times a day.
With 5 drivers, he's now spending more than $15,000 a month on gas.
We don't want to raise our prices because we don't want to contribute to inflation. We're holding steady through this.
Some relief may be coming soon, with President Trump saying he would like to put the federal gas tax on hold. But will it be enough to make a difference?
That's a Band-Aid on an absolutely gaping wound.
Right now, the federal gas tax is around 18 cents per gallon. The gas tax in Minnesota is nearly twice as much, at 33 cents per gallon. And even if we put both of those taxes on hold, economists say the prices would still be higher than they were before the conflict started.
The affordability crisis that people are feeling isn't likely to evaporate.
University of St. Thomas economics professor Tyler Schipper says the latest consumer price index shows that the high gas prices are now causing higher inflation in other areas, with an overall inflation rate of 3.8%. the highest in 3 years.
Unfortunately, it means that people are probably going to have to settle in for higher prices. That not only for things that you buy when you go to the gas station, but things you buy at the grocery store and the retail store. Those prices are also going to start to rise.
He suspects the Federal Reserve isn't going to lower interest rates anytime soon. And he isn't expecting any relief right away for gas prices either, because even if the conflict ends tomorrow, it would take some time for prices to go back down.
If you are in a business where you have tires going round and round, you're getting real hurt right now. Nobody is safe from this.
Gordon Severson, KARE 11 News.
Right now, a few states have either lowered or put their entire gas tax on hold. But as of right now, there are no serious discussions happening at the Minnesota state capitol. Meanwhile, hundreds of students will now have access to free dental care at school. Children's Dental Services announced that it is expanding its free dental care program to St. Paul public schools. City leaders say that Operation Metro Surge disrupted care for many uninsured and under-resourced families across the metro. St. Paul Mayor Kare says that the new program should help more than 1,000 kids get dental care.
Families are afraid. They were afraid to leave their homes during Operation Metro Surge. They were afraid to seek health care. And I heard from many families that they were foregoing care for themselves and because they were afraid to leave their homes. And so now the ability for children to access that where they're in school and when they're already here is so critical.
This program is backed by more than $100,000 in new funding from the Constellation Fund. New today, while the wait for the full NFL schedule is still pending, we do know now that the Vikings are playing at least one game south of the border. This is a pretty big deal. Minnesota will take on the 49ers in the 2026 Mexico game. It is scheduled for week 11 on Sunday, November 22nd, with a 7:20 Central Time kickoff. So that game will air right here on Kare 11. The Mexico game is one of 9 this upcoming season to be played abroad. Very exciting. This is also the first time a game is being played in Mexico since 2022. Stick with us. We got more to talk about and weather coming up after the break.